Hey there, I'm gonna talk to you about three more things that I think that we should normalize. I'm gonna call this spring edition because spring is in the air. There's nothing about spring that's in this video, but I thought that maybe I should give a shout out to the season. The first thing that I want to talk to you about is that you are probably closer to being unhoused than to be a millionaire. Or let me say a billionaire even, because you're actually closer to be a millionaire. I don't know why we idolize billionaires as much as we do, because in terms of where you are in life and what you have in life in comparison to somebody that has billions of dollars is, yeah, I don't know what to say there. But the average person is a few bad months away from being unhoused. But they're not a few great months away from being a billionaire. Now, I can't coin that phrase as my own. My boyfriend gave that one to me, but it's true. We tend to feel closer to these people that are idolized on TV and whatnot versus the person that's panhandling on the corner. And I kind of want to normalize the idea that as a community, we have more in common with, and we are actually closer to the person that you see panhandling. And I think as soon as people normalize that, as soon as people realize that, that is when we stand up more for who we are, for our communities, because right now it seems that more and more power is going to the people that don't need to have more power. More power should be going to those that have less power over their situation, they need to have more, I don't know what the word is, but they need to have more say and more power over fixing their situation. And a lot of people, I hate to tell you, really don't. They're either not in a place where they can make those determinations, they can't make those choices. When you're at a certain degree of poverty, every decision is hard and every decision is not a good decision. And I know that firsthand. I totally acknowledge the privilege that I have now, being able to be in a house now versus years ago when I couldn't feed myself. So yeah, I think that's something that we can, as a community, acknowledge that you probably have more in common. You probably have more of the same struggles. You probably have more things that you can relate to with a person that struggles with homelessness or is unhoused in some way than you would with the billionaire class. The second thing I want to talk to you about is that everybody is this close, is just steps away from going from an able-bodied individual to a disabled individual. It's just an oopsie away. And that's why it is so important for people especially to be cognizant and an ally to the disabled community, because there is just very little that is keeping anybody from being part of that community. And in the end, even if you're really healthy and luck is on your side and whatever, in the end, a person's just going to become disabled in their twilight years. As we get older, we need mobility aids, we need stronger glasses or different glasses, we need hearing aids a lot of times, etc., etc. And it is important, I think, for us to acknowledge that, because when that's acknowledged, when people realize how close we are to becoming disabled and that it's a reality at some point in the game, you're going to contend with that. As soon as people normalize that thought, I think a lot more consideration is going to go towards people that are disabled and the community that exists that surrounds disabled communities. And not all disabilities, in fact, there's very few disabilities that you will be able to pick out of a lineup. There is so much that goes on behind the scenes. People are very complex. The human body is very complex, and there's lots of things that can go wrong that will result in the diagnosis of something that would render somebody disabled. And I am part of that community, but I think that is something that can be done for just our own peace of mind. I think for our own peace of mind, knowing what the party thinks of becoming a disabled person, whether it is because of age and that's just wear and tear, or an accident, or whatever the case is. I think it's important to figure that out. And yes, I think that normalizing that is one step towards kind of a world where that exists. And people are more cognizant about how different political parties will affect various people of various abilities. This next one is something that I've noticed, and tell me if I'm missing something. I've noticed this in several provinces in Canada. If there's a housing shortage, why aren't we building smaller homes? I mean, there's a few things. There's a few thoughts here. Aren't smaller homes quicker to build? That's one. It would make sense to me to believe, and tell me if I'm wrong about this. If a house has a smaller layout or whatnot, aren't there less time frames that you have to deal with? Because there's smaller homes, there's simpler design. I myself am in a small home. Now, I'm not talking about tiny homes. I'm not talking about homes where a person can hitch that up to a truck and drive away. Although I'm not talking about that. But in a housing shortage where people want a permanent residence, I see a lot of big builds happening on big lots. But I'm not seeing smaller homes. And it's so interesting to me, like, why build one big house where the garage can fit a small house. And I'm not talking about houses that are designed for a family or multifamily or whatever. I'm not saying that there's no use to also be building larger homes for well-established families. But if people are trying to get into the market somehow, if people just want a place to live, they might not need this huge place. It might be fine that there's a smaller place. And I think more of those can be built in that time frame, but also they would be cheaper and people would actually be able to afford them. So it boggles my mind. I don't get it. Please inform me. I am under the opinion that forcing people and more people to rent is probably not the way that we want to go. Especially in politics where, now I know it used to be this way. I don't know if it's this way now. Didn't a person getting into politics to be prime minister have to own land? I'll have to look into that. So if the majority of the population is unable to get into the housing market, is in a situation where they will only be able to rent for their life, and there's a housing shortage, so people are having a hard time even finding rentals, isn't building smaller houses, won't that help solve that situation? I seem to think that it will a bit. I'm not saying that it's going to be the cure-all solution, but it creates a supply for people to start owning property before they have families, before they have whatever. Maybe they're a single person starting out. It seems to me that that would be part of it. And then if later on they have a different situation and they need more space, then, those other homes are available. I don't know. It just seems like it would make sense to have smaller homes available. So this has been the 3 things that I kind of wanted to normalize as well. So I'm going to sign off here, but I'm going to ponder these things for a little bit longer. I hope wherever you are and whatever you're doing, you're having the best time in the situation you find yourself in. And I will talk to you later.